test global health and the power of vaccines as never before. Today, AIDS is on track to kill more people than smallpox, particularly in the disease's old breeding ground, Africa. Sex workers looking for clients in Nairobi, Kenya. It could be any street in any city in Africa, and it's one of the important ways the AIDS virus is spread. Clients of these sex workers become infected and take the disease back home to their families. Charles Wachihi is a Nairobi doctor and an AIDS researcher.
Over 80% of the patients admitted to every hospital have HIV-related complications, ranging from diarrhea to chest infections to meningitis. You have all these people coming in and out, coming in and out, and then they come in and never go out.
AIDS has killed more than 20 million people, most here in Africa.
This is a sad place to be at. Most of the people buried here are between the ages of 20 and 30 years. As a doctor, it does raise a lot of anxiety and confusion in a person, especially when most of the people who are dying are at the prime of their life.
Charles Wachihi knows the despair of doctors unable to heal their patients.
I had a friend in high school. He died when he was about 23 years old. He's a person you see, he's been sickly, he's getting weak, then a year later he's in the newspaper, obituary.
AIDS sufferers in the West can take powerful antiretroviral drugs that will keep the virus at bay. But in Africa, these medications are far too expensive for most Kenyans to afford. Ada Kadiga is an ordinary, hard-working woman who caught HIV from her husband, who died of AIDS. She used to get free drugs from the hospital where she had a job, but now she's too sick to work and hasn't the money to buy drugs on her own. Dr. Susan Sadenbar has the task of allocating scarce AIDS drugs to her patients.
Okay, so money for you is quite a struggle. Do you have any plans to raise the money so you'll be able to access the drugs?
No.
That is quite worrying.
I cannot sleep because I'm worrying too much how to keep the food on the table. I know that I'm now dying because I live by those drugs now.
So you'd actually feel now that is a death sentence, you're going to die.
If any disease needs a vaccine, it's AIDS.
Africa is doomed without a vaccine. We have about 42 million infected throughout the world, and over 75% in Africa alone.
When AIDS first came on the scene 2 decades ago, I really expected 3 to 5 years we would have an effective vaccine. It's 20 years later, and we still don't have a vaccine.
Over the last 2 decades, researchers have learned that making a vaccine for HIV is extremely difficult because unlike other viruses, it destroys the immune system itself. When HIV enters the body, antibody proteins that try and block it can't attach themselves to the surface of the virus, so it's free to invade any cell it chooses. And it chooses helper T cells, the source of the killer T cells that would normally fight any invading virus. So with no killer T cells or antibodies to stop HIV, the virus keeps reproducing and overwhelms the entire immune system. Scientists have always seen the destruction of the immune system as the main stumbling block to an HIV vaccine. In this vast Nairobi shantytown of 50,000 people, researchers have made a remarkable discovery, which they hope will lead to a vaccine. They found a group of 200 sex workers here in Pumwani who are naturally immune to AIDS. Dr. Wachihi and his nurse Jean are part of an international team studying the AIDS-free prostitutes. One of them, Salome Simon, is starting her day. she's waiting for customers at the door of her house. By nightfall, she may have had 10 partners. Many will have HIV. Yet Salome has remained HIV-free.
I think I'm very lucky and I'm very happy because it's an astonishing way in which God has chosen me.
While Salome is totally free of HIV, Jennifer Wabui, another sex worker, has had the virus for 10 years, yet hasn't developed full-blown AIDS. Charles Wachihi and his researchers want to know what protects Jennifer from AIDS, and could this information be used to make a vaccine?
She is unique in that the immune system is constantly able to recognize HIV virus and continuously destroy it.
A friend of mine, a woman who used to live with me, had AIDS and passed away. If I do get AIDS, that's my destiny.
But Africa's destiny may lie in understanding the special properties of Jennifer's blood. Halfway around the world, at Oxford University, another part of the research team has found that the Pumwani women possess an abnormally high number of killer T cells. This means their killer T cells haven't been destroyed by HIV. In fact, it's just the opposite. The prostitute's killer T cells can actually destroy HIV. They do this by targeting 2 HIV proteins that always move to the surface of an invaded cell. When this happens, that cell is destroyed, meaning the prostitute's immune system can defeat HIV. Researchers have now learned which genetic fragments of HIV produce these proteins and have begun to inject the fragments into volunteers.
Okay.
Although the fragments alone cannot cause AIDS, the team hopes that by putting them into a vaccine, they will spark the production of the exact kind of killer T cells that protect the Nairobi prostitutes.
My reason for taking part was to try and help. It's one small thing that I can do. I can't go out there and help people in any other way. But by having a few injections and having a few blood tests, then hopefully I can help to have an impact.
At present, they're getting a positive response in 75% of the volunteers, an excellent test result. But no one knows if these vaccine-produced killer T cells will be able to stop a real HIV attack. If the initial trials continue to go well, the next stop will be the streets of Nairobi. 2,000 HIV-negative sex workers and their clients will take the vaccine for 2 years to see if they can remain AIDS-free. But it will take several more years to complete all the trials, and this vaccine, like others being tested, may ultimately end in failure. It's ironic that Nairobi sex workers like Jennifer, who usually spread HIV, may someday prove instrumental in stopping it. But even if the vaccine is successful, it will come too late to save Ada Kadiga. She's now in a hospital, but without drugs and money, her hope has run out.
In terms of the infection rates, the mortality rates, the cost of drugs, that means if we don't have a vaccine, we need actually this vaccine yesterday. We needed it yesterday.
The great power of any vaccine is that it keeps people from getting sick in the first place. No hospitals, no expensive medicines, no fear that a horrible disease can strike at any moment. But for now, when it comes to AIDS, freedom from fear is only a dream. For another global